start. I'll record this meeting as well.
Okay, we're in business.
Let me just double check that we're up and running. Yep, we're good to go.
Right. So I can say good morning, can I? Is it?
Yes.
Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining in with us. I'd like to welcome, in particular, introduce Victoria Moffat, wherever she is. She's joined us as the new lead communities for pensions. So welcome, Victoria, wherever you are. And
thank you, Bob.
Good to see you, and hope you enjoy your time with us here in Warwickshire.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you all.
Good. And I don't know if anybody's come down from Scotland, or are they quarantined at the airport at the moment and having a job getting through? I don't know. Anyway, we shall move on. Yes, Paul. All right. If you want to speak, would you try and use your hand? There's a hand on the black bar. Do you know what I mean? Other than that, turn off your microphones. Other than that, we get interference and feedback and goodness knows what else. And the rest of it, we just have to play it, to coin a phrase, by ear. So good luck, and let's go with apologies.
I haven't received any apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. Wally Redford is struggling to get in, might be a bit late, probably is a bit late. So he may join us during the meeting. So any declarations of interest? There being none. Good. We then move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. I will say we'll just be a little bit more careful about it because there were only two of us there. So we were only quorate. Bill and I agreed most of the time. I don't think there's anything too controversial any members want to dispute. If not, Bill, you happy with them? You're mute, I think.
I'm happy with the minutes.
Yep. Any members got any comment on the minutes at all? If not, let's take them as read. Thank you very much. We move on to the next item, which is the forward plan, which is Chris.
Thanks, Bob. So this is the rolling quarterly forward plan for the investment subcommittee, and we update this in every meeting to show the next year's worth of agenda items. I'll just highlight a few things about it relevant to today. First is that we've got this plan that every quarter we receive a report from a fund manager outside of the pool. So we plan to have Harbourvest last time. We've not brought them back this time because this is our first meeting under the COVID situation, and we wanted to try and keep this agenda as manageable as possible. So we'll see how this meeting goes, and then if we think we can fit them in time-wise, we'll get back into the habit of having fund managers. So that's on the forward plan, but it's not on the agenda today. We've also got risk monitoring as a standing item from here onwards, and you'll see in this agenda a risk monitoring report. We used to bring the risk register once a year, but now we're going to make sure we look at it every quarter. So that's a new thing that we're doing. The other thing you'll see on there is we've got a dedicated COVID report this time, and we'll have another dedicated COVID report at the next committee, and then we'll take stock from there. You can see the table at the end of the report, which shows standing items and then the things that are bespoke. That's all I have to say by way of introduction. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Any comments, anybody? I think it's fairly comprehensive as far as we can tell. With this forever moving situation at the moment, it's difficult to plan ahead, I think, for anything other than tomorrow. But it's good news. Thank you, Chris. So we'll move on then to training, which is Michael, I think.
Hi, Bob. Thank you, Bob. This report introduces the proposed 2020 training plan for subcommittee. It offers a list of subject options consistent with the earlier survey of members' needs. It also suggests a training log be kept and presented to the subcommittee annually. That's it from me. Bob, you're muted, Bob. I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
I'm telling everyone to mute, so I did. And right, let's start again. So we're going to point out that it's mandatory for members to do training, at least 2 sessions a year for the financial control thing. And also there's on this report, there's a thing about external courses or external seminars. I go on 2 or 3 of them. I know John Horner goes on them. I think it'd be nice for members to go on it. You're going to feel that the rest of the local government pension funds are working the same way as we are, and you can get an idea of how we're doing. So it's really the cross-pollination of those seminars as much as the actual content of the seminar itself. So if you want to go on one, let Michael or Victoria or is it Anita know that you want to. If not, the training is quite straightforward. We've talked about what subjects we want to do. I think we can send emails after this meeting if you've got any particular subject you want to do training on. So, is there any questions on that?
Karen, Councillor Horner and Paul Potter have raised their hands to speak.
All right, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Just to give you a little bit of an update, the sessions that have my name next to them, Articulating Investment Beliefs and Introduction to the Speculative Capital, those 2 sessions could be merged into one if helpful, and also to say that I have been running them quite successfully in a virtual environment. It requires those attending to do a little bit of homework in advance so that we can keep it slightly shorter. But it has been quite successful, so I've done that for 2 local authority funds in the past month.
Thank you. Paul? Paul? No?
Sorry, I've got a double mute. Just to flag, at the last meeting, we were adopting this new climate change policy, and that did re-trigger again the discussions on what we were wanting to do or trying to do, admittedly with a fairly small committee at that point. So I mean, I would advocate picking up the ESG related and beliefs related points as quickly as possible. I think that was kind of felt to be a priority last time. Just one other comment on one of the items on here. We've got a sort of linking investment strategy and actuarial valuations. If anything, that could probably be put back a bit on the basis that we're just emerging from that process from the last valuation, and that is something we want to do again, but maybe closer to the next actuarial valuation might be a better time to do that. So that's probably one that can be pushed back into later this year or into next year, but I'd probably bring the ESG and responsible investment ones forward as a kind of personal thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. John Horner?
Thanks. Hang on. Can you, it says unmuting at the moment. Can you hear me?
Yes, John, we can hear you.
Okay, come back now. Good. It was just really, if I go to quite a few free efforts down in London and places, and I just wondered, how do I report those? Is it just straight through to Anita?
Yeah, yes. If you want them in the log, yes.
Yeah, because we don't have our own log, do we? Or do we?
Well, the idea is to start one up now.
Yeah, we could. Are you going to do it through HR? You know that. Our expenses system. We could have a training log section, couldn't we?
That's possible. We'll get Anita to have a look at that, John.
Or we just run our own on an Excel or something. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Yes, John, it doesn't mention a lot of the local authority pension fund meetings and what have you. But, still. Chris, I think you're next. Chris Norton.
Thanks, Bob. Just to second what Paul was saying about I'd support some focus on ESG. Another reason why it's particularly topical is Port to Coast are considering future products, and one of them is potentially a passive equity fund with an ESG tilt, which we'll talk about a bit later. So if that's something that we may potentially have as an option open to us, it would be a relevant topic to do.
Yeah. Any other comments on the training? If not, with the recommendations, fairly straightforward. We note and comment.
Chair, Councillor Gifford would like to speak.
Sorry, thank you very much. Oh yes. Bill.
Yes, I was quite keen on. Very keen on having more ESG training. One of the I noted what Karen was saying about doing some of her training online, and the one that interested me was the introduction to the spectrum of capital, mapping the difference between ESG, sustainable and impact investing. And I just wondered whether we could try that online. Just a thought, but I think Paul's absolutely right. It was something that we considered to be important and something that would be, but if we could at least start doing some ESG or some training to be, but ESG would be a good idea. Doing it online would be a good idea. And if Karen is able to do online, that spectrum of capital includes ESG, and it's talking about the difference between ESG, sustainable and impact. I don't know what Paul's thoughts are about that.
Paul, got any thoughts on that?
One thing. I think we can, tailor those sessions to get the most out of it as to what our priorities are. But I think, from what I've heard, these sessions have gone really well elsewhere, and I think it will be helpful if all the committee are on the same page about what the priorities are. And I think the session like that can work virtually rather than put it off for 6 or 9 months or however long we have to wait. So I would advocate cracking on with that. Yes.
Chair, Councillor Dervix would like to speak as well.
Yep. Neil.
Thank you. I think that it's really important that we do meet with other people, whether it's virtual or face-to-face on the conferences and things. I was really only just getting started when everything stopped, but I'd be happy to go to any conferences that I can. If we have training on the computers, then we do it. But I think a lot of the value of some of these courses is lost to me at the moment, at least, because of my unfamiliarity with the methods of working. You lose out on the secondary agenda and the secondary knowledge that you pick up on face-to-face sessions where you can just make odd comments and, for want of a better word, gossip around subjects. So that would be my preferred one, whenever that is possible.
Yeah, I agree. There's two. I don't know whether they'll be running the Leeds one. That used to be held at Celtic Manor down in Wales, and they moved it up to the Armoury up in Leeds. That's the one in September, but I guess that one won't be on, actually.
I think that one of my problems with face-to-face meetings at the moment is my wife's health. We are in total lockdown for the foreseeable future.
Well, that's
yeah.
But the one I've looked at is the one in Bournemouth. It's usually a good conference. I quite enjoy it. Just before Christmas.
Yeah.
If you want to go to the seaside before Christmas, it's a good conference.
I think
Any other comments?
reviewing it as we go along.
Yes.
Chris Norton's got his hand up to speak.
Yes, Chris, thank you very much.
Just a quick comment. Neil, we will try to rearrange for you this. We arranged some training for you previously, and we went through a bit to do with the admin and governance side. We'll pick up, and if you're happy, we'll arrange over Microsoft Teams the investments training we were going to do, which got knocked to the side due to the lockdown. And also, if there's any particular agenda items, coming up in the papers or that we're doing in training, we're happy to speak to you directly and explain stuff if that's helpful.
Thank you very much. That would be very helpful.
Great. Okay, can we move the recommendations? Fine. Nobody said no. Nobody said yes either. But we may all be on mute, of course.
Do we put our hands up?
Yes.
So
Thank you very much.
Is that physically or electronically?
Yes, they're doing physically.
I can't do it.
Sorry to interrupt. I think in this instance,
my political views. Yes.
It's going to be easier if anyone has any objections if they raise their hands. Otherwise, it just gets a little bit confusing. So if people have objections, once the chair asks for recommendation approval, anyone who wants to change that or object to it, that's the way to do it, rather than try and keep track of everybody.
So approval is assumed unless you say otherwise.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Next item then is item 4, which is on the funding strategy statement.
Yeah. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Yes, Neil.
How are you? All right.
Yes, thank you. And you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Members who attended the meeting in March will remember that we brought the funding strategy statement there for approval, with the proviso that regulations had recently been issued in February by the government, bringing in what was called the exit credit regulations. And this is where the fund can pay an amount out to an exiting employer whose assets and liabilities assessment leads to a credit payment. So there is an amendment to the funding strategy statement where the fund will consider how those assessments will be done and whether they will make a payment to an exiting employer. And we're simply asking the subcommittee to approve the amendments. The actual admissions and terminations policy is going to the Staff and Pensions Committee this afternoon. Once, and if you do approve, the funding strategy statements will be put on the fund's website, available for all employers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's a very long document, but I assume most of it's the same as has been for some time.
On pages, I think 19 in the document, you will see that I've highlighted the bits there that are relevant in the Appendix 1.
All right. Okay, anybody got any questions on that for Neil? It looks fairly sort of straightforward to me. And so the recommendation is that the subcommittee approves the amended document. And then it goes this afternoon to the other committee.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, move on to item 5. Risk monitoring.
Thanks, Bob. So this is the quarterly monitoring of the risks presented to the fund. This report is going to this investment subcommittee this morning, and also it will go to the Staff and Pensions Committee this afternoon. The difference between the two, though, is that in this committee we focus on investment-related risks, and in Staff and Pensions we focus on admin-related risks. But you'll see the risk register underneath everything is fundamentally the same. So the first bit of the report is similar. What we've done is have a look at how COVID has impacted on the risks that we had previously identified in the risk register And to keep things simple, you can see a table where on the right-hand side on section 2.3 of the report, you can just see how COVID has impacted on those risks. So the key things to pull out is we think that the three areas that are kicked up the highest are the risk of long and short-term investment returns and asset values and employer contributions being paid. Those are the ones we think have been pushed up the highest. The report later on the agenda that focuses on COVID will go into a bit more detail on COVID-related risks. And because COVID is brand new, that's got its own item. By the time of the next committee, we intend to have amalgamated everything into one simple risk register from that point forwards. The other thing perhaps to mention is cash flow. That's something that's taken a lot of attention since the lockdown. And we've also got a bespoke report looking just at cash flow later on in this agenda because of the high profile of the issue. Those are the key things I had to highlight by way of introduction. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Councillor Dervix and Councillor Gifford and Councillor Horner would like to speak.
And Mr. Potter, yeah. Right, Neil Dervix.
Thank you. Going to page 80 of the reports, the middle item, item 11 there, says that a cyber security policy is being reported to the June Staff and Pensions Committee for approval. Reading through the papers that I've got for that meeting, that isn't included yet. Is it going to be a verbal report, or has it lost its way somewhere?
Thanks for the question. What's happened there is we've got the cybersecurity policy ready to go, and it was on the agenda, but there was discussions about how much we could cope with on the agenda because of COVID, and therefore we looked at what was the top priority and what we could put back. So the report's ready, and we've got a policy ready to go, and we'll take it to the next Staff and Pensions Committee. So it's only come off the agenda because of how much we can talk about or what we could talk about. What we can also do in the meantime is there's elements of that policy we can carry on with and implement and enact. We don't need to wait for the committee to come around. Just for example, one element of the policy is to speak to third parties who we work with, ask them about their cybersecurity arrangements and risks so that we can start to understand that as a client. So things like that we can carry on with. And then the plan is for it to go back to Staff and Pensions at their next meeting. But it was only COVID and how much can you cope with on an agenda that took that off the list. And this report was written and had to go into the system before we knew that the other one was coming off.
Thank you very much. That helped.
Bill,
clearly.
Bill Gifford.
Yes, I thought it was, until I saw this report, I hadn't thought about the risk of the employer contributions not being paid. Clearly, that's not likely to be any of the local authorities or the academies, but it could be some of the contractors who've got staff in the pension scheme who've been transferred to and I just wondered what level of risk is. Obviously you've got it as a significantly higher risk of them failing to pay the contributions, but they're a relatively small percentage of the total in the pension fund. Am I not right, Chris?
Yes, so there could be risks across the piece. So for example, not necessarily expecting anything, but if you look at local authorities who are scheduled bodies, although we are backed by precept income, that's not the same for all local authorities. So if you're a district or a borough, you'll be leaning much more heavily on income from commercial sources, as it were. So their cash flows may be hit. At the moment, we haven't experienced too much activity in the way of employers stepping forward and saying, because of COVID, I simply cannot pay my contributions. But what we have noticed is where employers were already experiencing difficulties, COVID has joined the list of things that are making it difficult for them. But I think we will see perhaps over the next couple of months, because contributions will come in the middle of the month following when they're due, we'll start to see what the experience is.
Thank you very much. John Horner.
Yeah, thanks. It's a bit disconcerting this because it says unmuting all the time. But anyway, one question I had was the risk level after mitigations. Is there anywhere I can find what those mitigations are likely to be? Because the risk level obviously comes down, but you know, what mitigation are we doing?
Yes, so there's two tranches of mitigations. If you look at the original risk register, that will list all of the original mitigations that we had at the start of the year. And then if you look at Appendix 1, the right-hand column goes through all of the current additional issues that we've got. So that's all of the mitigations as they stand at the moment.
Okay.
Hi, it's John again. So the mitigate, so for example, cash flow requirements, it's column 2, is it? 3? So the mitigation is cash flow review by fund officers. I can't see what this is. I've got this is page 1 of 2, is it? Page 79?
79.
Yes.
Appendix I seem to have.
Yes, that's right. So Appendix 1 is page 79 and page 80.
Yeah. And where's, so you've got the action.
Cash flow.
So cash flow requirements cannot be met. Is the mitigation that we review by fund officers and financial advisors?
Yes, that's right. And the product of that review is the cash flow approach that we're taking now, and we go through that in the dedicated cash flow report later on the agenda.
Yeah,
so net result is that if it looks like, this is me trying to interpret, if it looks like we're not going to meet our cash flow requirements, the mitigation is that we change our access to funds. I mean, would you just say we just sell more shares?
Well, so briefly, for example,
at the end of the day, yes.
Yeah. I mean, briefly, we're running with slightly higher cash balances than we used to. We've got the JP Morgan fund, which is a method of accessing cash, which avoids the more volatile funds. But we can talk in depth in the cash flow item later on all of those actions, if that's okay.
It's just getting the feel for actually what the mitigation is, not that you review it and then take mitigation, you see?
Yes.
Otherwise, it's pointless saying, we look at this little nice red and yellow, it's amber though, isn't it? Not yellow. Red and orangey green thing. And its question is how we go from 6 to 3 or 16 to 9. It's how you achieve that. And that was really the question I had. And yes, we'll find it, no doubt, but it might be useful to have a brief summary for very simple councillors to understand.
Okay then, John. We've got Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Gifford actually raised my point about the Warwickshire County Council contribution. Personally, in the table at item 9, I would remove the word significantly, because Councillor Gifford's point essentially is the size of the contribution is, the smaller the contribution, the more likely they are to default or miss a payment.
Is that so?
I think it is.
Mm.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris.
Do you mean as in smaller organisations are more at risk cash flow?
Yes. Smaller organisations, not the smaller the amount. No.
Yes, that could be a fair comment, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much for that. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the reference number 4 on page 75, poor performance of actively managed funds. I mean, that's currently showing as no change, but I think with the increased volatility in markets and also the fact that you're getting these big down periods and then followed by a bounce back, But actually, that's quite hard for active managers to do well in that situation. Some will get their opportunities right and they'll do better than expected. But I think there'll be some who actually do worse than expected. And we've seen that in some of the numbers coming through from the Border to Coast Equity Fund, for example. So I would just say that in the current climate, I'd be inclined to push the risk level up a little bit of that item.
Yep.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Okay, any other points? Chris, anything else you want to say?
That's everything from me, thanks.
So, right, the recommendation is that we note and comment. We've commented on it and we've noted it. Fine. Right, we now move into the confidential section. So all those who shouldn't be here can switch off, please. I'm not sure how you do that, but there we are.
I just need to ask Carl, sorry to interrupt. Carl, can you stop the YouTube broadcast now as well, please?